Please welcome Developer Advocate Tony Chan.
Konnichiwa. Today I'm going to talk to you about Android market. And let's take a look at the agenda for today. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the Android addressable customer. So how large is the customer base and how many cell phones available for you through Android market. So next things I want to talk about is all the Android market features. So I will talk about all the existing features, what's the latest feature, and what's coming. And the last things I want to talk about is the Android market, some tips to share with you to how to best utilize the Android market. So let's jump to the first topic. So I'm going to share with you some statistics. So for smartphone shipment, we are happy to let you know we are leading globally with 48% share. And one thing is even more interesting is in APAC, in Asia Pacific, we are leading even more. So in countries like South Korea, we have 85% share. And in Taiwan, we have 70% share. So it's really amazing, the growth of Android, especially in Asia. Some more statistics I want to share with you about Android market is we have more than 300,000 applications available in Android market. And I'm happy to tell you now we have more than 8 billion downloads from Android market. So some of these stats you already learned from Team's talk this morning in the keynote, but I would like to stress this again because this is such an exciting thing I want to remind everyone. So a little bit interesting thing about this 8 billion download installation. So do you remember from this morning, how long does it take for us to get the first billion? Any idea? So it took us like 20 months to get the first billion. But what is interesting is it only takes us 5 months to get to the second billion, 3 months for the third billion, and then 2 months, less than 2 months, and less than 2 months to get the 8 billion. It's truly amazing, the growth of all the application, all the Android smartphone. Another thing about the growth in terms of activations, we now have more than 500,000 activations every day. So if you step back and think about this, as a developer, every single day you have 500,000 new phones, naked, as Tim mentioned, waiting for your application to be available for them to consume. And needless to say, we have already 190 million phones already active out there waiting for your apps. So some more statistics about global expansions. So we are very happy to see 3-time growth in the States, in the US. But what is even more interesting, in the rest of the world, that was our OW stand for, we see 14 times the growth in the rest of the world. And part of that is in Japan. So make sure you seriously consider building Android application. And for apps installation, we already said this is a relative graph, by the way. And we see users love to install application on tablets. So if you haven't started consider building tablet application, I strongly encourage you guys to start thinking about working on tablets, because this is the trend. And we can see that trend even more significant in pay apps installations. So a lot of people love to use application on tablets. Now I'm going to switch gears and talk about the features in Android markets. So first of all, developer now can register as a tracker merchant in 29 countries, and of course one of them is Japan. And as a developer, you can access all the download and error reports coming from your user. And always the strength about Android is there's no review process. But at the same time, the Android engineering team is committed to build new safeguards to keep malware off the Android market as well as all the devices. So pay apps now are available in 137 countries. And to fight piracy, we have a feature called application licensing, which I'm going to cover in more detail in the coming slides. So here are some more features available in Android market, and one user loves very much is we have a web version of the Android market. So user can pick and browse their application now on the desktop on any browser, and if they decided to install the application, they can even click on the desktop, and Google will actually push the application to the user's cell phone. And we see a lot of growth, and that actually contributes to the reason why we have such an explosive growth. We have another feature called application statistics, and that helps developers to make a lot of development and marketing decisions, which I have another slide I will talk about later. And we recently also introduced in-app billing, and we see from a lot of developers receive some very good revenue results. I'm going to talk about that later. And for carrier billing, I'm very happy to let everyone know again, carrier billing is available in Japan in all three major carriers, Docomo, au, and SoftBank. We now support 14 currencies, and of course, one of them is Japanese yen. And we also have monthly sales reporting. So now, I want to talk a little bit more about application licensing. So this is one feature we introduced to make sure your application can only be used by licensed users. In other words, all the paid user. So this API works with any app that use API level 3+, and on any device with the Android market client. So as a developer, you can maintain full control of how your apps enforce these licensing policy. So I'll show you the architecture of how application licensing works. So there are three major components. First, your apps, the Android market client, and then the Google licensing server. So, of course, when you want to check whether the user is licensed to use your application, you need to know the user info. And these three blocks on the left-hand side constitute the user Android phone. So as a developer, your job is to implement the LVL, stand for License Validation Library. And after that, I'm going to show you the flow of the entire flow of how the license check working. So first, the user click on your application, and then it will bind to the Android market client because it needs to know the user information. So it will retrieve the user information on behalf of your application, and then send a request with this information to the Google licensing server. And of course, the licensing server will return you a signed response, which you can verify using the public key we share with you in the Android market developer console. So this is the flow of how application licensing works. And there are a few things you need to make sure you're doing it right when you implement the application licensing. First, you have to make sure your code is obfuscated. So does everyone know what obfuscation means? I see some hands. Maybe let me explain a little bit more of what code obfuscation means. So code obfuscation is a technique to convert like some of the user meaningful like variable into some symbols. For example, it's very understandable to understand what response code mean, but after obfuscation, it probably will become a symbol like K, and if you have a method calling check access, it will convert it to something like VW, and so on. So it really makes it harder for hacker to reverse engineer your code, and that's what code obfuscation is about. So what it can help is it will remove all the symbols that reveal your original structure of your application, but what it cannot help is it cannot prevent some automated attacks or order the flow of your application. So we have some very popular obfuscator. For example, here we have an open source obfuscator called ProGuard, which actually is built into Android projects through our ADT. And I really encourage you guys to go to the open source website and check that out for the details. So let's go back to the other points. Another thing is make sure, do not simply reuse the sample code we have, comes with the library. I heard from Roske earlier, he told me there was a developer here and his implementation of application licensing got compromised and ended up actually he was trying to reuse exactly the same sample code. So make sure you modify your code, modify the license validation library before you integrate to your application. So another more sophisticated technique you can consider using is to offload the license validation check to a trust server. So the user Android phone is not considered as a trust environment because they can root their phone and do anything they like. But if your application is serving data from a remote server, you can consider to do the license validation on your server, which is a trusted environment, and then you can make the decision whether to serve the data to the user phone. So this is a much more secure way to do license validation check. The next things I want to talk a little bit more about is application statistics. So this is something you can use to tune your development and marketing effort. And so what I mean by that is if you are so let me show you what kind of data you can see. So here is a screenshot of application statistics. So you can see the active installation trend of your app. You can also see like distribution by different Android version or distribution by the type of devices that install your application. So back to the tuning. So in terms of development, if you see your application are not used by, for example, Android version 2.0, you may consider actually stop supporting that platform and upgrade your API level. Another thing, in terms of marketing, if you don't see a particular popular device that use your application, there may be something going on. Maybe there's a bug for that particular device, and then you can base on that information to do some investigation to make sure your apps is available to all the device you target. in-app building. So the first thing I always want to remind developer is in-app building is only for selling digital content. So there are two types of digital contents, managed and unmanaged. So an example of managed content could be music. So you don't want your user to purchase the same music over and over again. But for unmanaged products, it could be something like in a game like lives, weapons, things that can be purchased again. So we have two ways to manage these products. So again, in-app building works with any apps using API level 4+, and on devices with Android Market client. We see some very good revenue boost, almost like up 25 times for some applications. So it's really a new way of, a new business model. In the past, you either sell your application, or you just list it on Android Market free and showing ads. But now you have a third business model. You can offer your application free, but you can do in-app building from your application. So some things you need to watch out when you implement in-app building. First, you need to use your release signing key for development. So this is not true for most of the development in Android, but for in-app building, you have to use the release signing key for development. Another thing you need to watch out is you cannot use the Google Checkout API to do cancellation, order cancellation and refund. So you have to go to the Checkout Merchant Center and using the user interface to manually cancel those orders or refund. Another thing is if you are a regular checkout user, you know there's a callback URL in checkout, but in Android environment, the notification is actually going to the Android market, so the callback actually will not work in this case. And finally, for order notification, please make sure you acknowledge every single notification we send you. Otherwise, we will continue sending you the notification until you acknowledge it. So monthly sales reporting. So this is very useful for accounting purpose. So you can now download monthly spreadsheets with detailed transactions of all the records, all the app purchase, including in-app payments, in your local currency. Okay, so what's new? So the first thing I want to talk about is multiple APK support. So I know like this is a feature we got a lot of requests from game developer. So now you can filter your application actually by specific segments, so like platform versions, screen size and density, or even texture formats. But the cool thing about this is now instead of uploading multiple applications to Android Market, now you have one single product listing on Android Market with all these different APKs. Now, and that means you have only one set of user ratings, comments, and billings. So it's really good for game developer. But at the same time, this feature, the goal of Android is, in most cases, you can probably have one single APK for all of your devices. So this may be a feature that's actually good for some specific case for game developers, and so make sure you know why you have to use this one. And another feature we introduced recently is called device availability. So it shows all the supported device for the published or even draft application you have. So in the use case of this is if you have an application that cannot be run on a particular device, so you can blacklist that device. So, but one thing you have to pay attention is, so if you have some problem running your application on a particular device model, so what would be the first things you should do if you have problem running something on a particular model? So the first thing you need to do is to fix the bug, right? So instead of blacklisting a device model right away, the right thing to do is to debug the problem. So consider this as a last resort before you blacklist a device, because the right thing to do is to fix the problem. So another new things we introduced is called new localized listings. So there are a couple listings we add in Android Market now. So we hear a lot of feedbacks from you guys saying it's very hard to get list on Android Market because there are so many good applications with many installs and good ratings, and they have been around in Android Market much longer than my application. So we hear you, and that's why we introduced a whole bunch of new listings that we are looking into a much shorter time frame. So in other words, if your application is doing very well within a short period of time, it will be showing up in these new listings. We also add another way to surface your application better. We call it new recommendations. So users who view application A, we will also recommend some application that other users view. So it's an aggregation of all the data, anonymous data. And another thing is for user install certain type of application, we also recommend some other application that other user install as well. So it gives you a better opportunity to surface your application, just another place. And finally, we introduced two batches. So one is called editor choice, another one is top developer. So we only give very few of these to top developers, so only super high quality applications with great ratings, because this is really a proof actually you are a really truly outstanding application, and give the user the confidence to install and use your application. So what's coming? So what's coming soon is what we call large application support. So we have now the ability to accept application up to 4 gigabytes. So the base application is still 50 meg, but we have now accept 2 additional 2 gigabytes archives. So the nice things about these archives is you can put anything you like. So for example, you can put images, you can put videos, and you can even put classes. So if you figure out, you can figure out a way to dynamically load classes and expand your application functionality. So it's really exciting, and it will come fairly soon. Okay, so the third part of the talk is I want to share with you some tips, some Android Market tips that you can better leverage the Android Market platform. So the first thing is use the recent changes field for your application to inform your user what all changes or new feature bug fix you introduce in a particular version. I'm really surprised actually not a lot of people use this field, but this is an extremely important field you need to use to communicate to your user. So for example, myself, when I install a new update an application, I definitely will check this out and make sure and I'm excited to see what kind of fix and new features available in the updates. Another thing you need to think twice before is to make sure your application before you make it free, you have to think twice before that. Because once you make your application free, you can make it a pay app again. So that's one thing you need to pay attention. Another tips I want to share with you is consider localize your listing details. So here in Android market, you have, especially you are targeting global market. So consider in additional to Japanese description, adding like other languages like English and or even Chinese if you are targeting other countries. Because user in this country may not be able to understand your local language. And if you don't have the resource to do that, at least consider checking the box at the bottom, allow Google to do the auto translation for you. But of course, you have to use it very carefully because sometimes translation does have mistakes. So make sure, if you have time, make sure you do your own translation. Probably that would be the best. Another thing is spend extra effort on the graphics for your application. I know everyone here, most of you are developers, and probably you spend 95% of your time on coding. But what makes it counts for user is they really pay a lot of attention on the UI. And this is the fact. So for example, here, I have an application. I create a simple application, and the icon on the left-hand side is the one I made. And then I find another icon actually for another application using, for similar purpose, using this icon. So if you are the user, would you consider installing my application or the one on the right? I think the answer is pretty obvious, right? Another thing about graphics is some of the graphics, like the feature graphics, are very, very important. Let's say if you build a super high quality application and we decide to feature your apps, if the feature graphics is not available, we cannot feature you. So that's a very sad thing, right? So make sure you spend time to put all these graphics together just so that we can help to feature your application. Another thing you want to consider is using Google Analytics. So in our documentation in code.google.com, there's for the analytics library, there is a place you can actually generate a URL to keep track of where the installation is coming from. So this is a very important, useful data for you to do the analysis. Another thing is there is a place you can upload a short video to tell your user what kind of features are available in your apps. So a picture is more than 1,000 words. Sometimes it's easier for a user to view a short video rather than reading a long passage in the description. Again, another thing is make sure your filters in your application manifest are set properly. The last things you want to happen is you build a top quality application, but end up actually nobody can install it because you set your manifest filter incorrect. And of course, we have the device availability feature for you to exclude some of these devices that cannot run your application, but use it only as a last resort. Another thing, consider adding some description in your description to explain why you ask for certain permissions in your application. So I love this actually example is from an application in market. So it's basically saying they ask for the phone call permission, but but they will never make the call unless you actually click on the button. So it's very easy for user to understand and have the kind of confidence why the application asks for certain permissions. You will be surprised how much user appreciate like this kind of explanation. Again, another thing is to price your application right. So make sure you price your application relative to your competitors. Because as a developer, sometimes we think like we deserve a lot of money for the application, but you have to make sure your competitor also charge similar prices. Again, user is your customer, right? And you have to make sure to monitor their comments and feedback, do updates on your application. Some more tips how to make your application successful. Of course, you have to build a high-quality application so that we can help you to show up in Android market as well as like having good ratings. Also consider to set up a support forum or have email communication with the user. And another key thing is we see successful application tends to have regular updates and useful updates. And regular means not too frequent. So you don't want to spam your user, like have updates every single day, right? And if you don't even put anything in the recent change field, they don't even know what you're updating, and end up they may uninstall your application. That's the last thing you want to happen. Market your apps. Consider doing some price promotion. Maybe lower your price for a few weeks, or do cross promotion. If you have multiple applications, consider recommend your other application within your current application. Also, you can consider advertise your apps in AppMobs or any other ad network. And if you offer a service, you can offer your service to another Android application as an intent, and then you can work with the other application developer for doing affiliation. And finally, use Android analytics to better understand your user behavior. So there are a lot of featuring opportunities in Android market. So here are some screenshots like where your application can be featured. So build a top quality application, and your apps will have a chance to show up in these places. And finally, this is a summary page I have for Android market. So the first thing is build a high quality application. Make sure you do the promotion, listen to your customer, do all the frequent updates and all the marketing. So an Android market from us, we will try to surface your app through all these new localized listing, and then also in these new recommendations. And finally, hopefully, if your application becomes very popular, and we will assign you the top developer or editor choice badge. And that's pretty much sum up the whole sessions. And I hope you learned something from the talk. And here's some links. So for security issue or phishing issues, these are the email address you want to contact Google. And for Android market support, so we have Japanese translation page for support, but sometimes some of the pages are only available in the English locale. So if you don't see some support page, try looking at the support website using the English locale, just like adding the HL equals to EN_US. So you probably will find out some other support form in English. But you can submit those requests in Japanese. We have staff to be able to understand your questions. So thank you very much for your time.